There are very few movies that capture the raw, the devastating reality of war like The Grave of the Fireflies. It's a story that is heart-wrenching and that will make you question, why the heck is the world so horrible and cruel? Given the current circumstances of the world right now, people are experiencing this in a very real way. But more than just a war story, this movie speaks to the heart of what it means to suffer, to love, and to hope in a world that feels broken beyond repair, but you're hoping in an abyss. I want to dive into the themes of Grave of the Fireflies and explore what it teaches us about human suffering and how these truths align with a Christian perspective. Grave of the Fireflies is set in 1945 in the final months of World War II, where the US started firebombing campaign on different Japanese cities. These attacks left many people homeless and losing their lives because the US wanted to break the morale of the Japanese people and end the war. This is where we have Seita and Seiko being two casualties, which highlight how war causes suffering to some of the people that are least likely to defend themselves, which is children. We see Seita and Setsuko lose everything, their mother, their home, their sense of security, all because of a war they had no control over. This kind of suffering feels all too real, not just for them, but for us as well, because it reminds us of the brokenness of the world we live in. The Bible speaks to this in Romans 8:22, where it says, "We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in pains of childbirth right up to this present time." Suffering is a universal experience because we live in a world devastated by sin. Grave of the Fireflies forces us to confront this reality because it brings us face to face before stuff like this does in the world. Seita's love for Setsuko is one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking aspects of this story. For Seita, he sacrifices everything to protect his sister, even while everything around him is crumbling. As he loves her, his efforts aren't enough. His pride, his youth, and his inability to ask for help ultimately lead to their tragedy. This is where we see the limitations of human love. While it's powerful, it can't always save us. But the Bible points to a love that can save us, a sacrificial love that goes beyond human limits. In John 15:13, Jesus says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one friend." Christ's love isn't limited by pride or resources. It's perfect and eternal. And honestly, who could blame him? His family, who he gave dresses to provide them with money for food and rice, ended up treating him and his sister poorly, acting as if the only reason that his extended family wasn't surviving was because of them. It wasn't because of them. It's crazy. And I can understand why Seita wanted to do things his own way and survive on his own and steal from people's fields because no one else around him was willing to help him. I think another element of this movie is the siblings' isolation. After their mom dies, they're taken in by their aunt. But instead of finding a refuge, they face rejection and they face neglect, which makes their suffering even worse because you have someone that has taken you in to care for you, but after a while, they start to look at you with a stench or a burden to care for their own needs. I had real life beef with the aunt of this movie because how are you going to sell your sister's Komodos and act like the one helping the fam and act like you're the one helping the family stay alive? It's so frustrating. As Christians, we're called to do the opposite. James 1:27 reminds us to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and Galatians 6:2 calls us to carry each other's burdens. Community is meant to be a source of strength in times of crisis, and this raises a challenge for us. When we're struggling, are we being the kind of community that offers love and support to those who are struggling? Would we want the same thing and vice versa if we were going through a hard time? Towards the end of the movie, Tetsuko asks a question: why do fireflies have to die so soon? As sort of a resemblance as to them being kids. Why do they have to die so soon? Seita and Setsuko, mostly Seita, are hoping the whole time that the war will end. They're hopeful that when their dad comes back, he will save them from despair, from the tragedy and agony that they're experiencing in this current moment. But he never comes. When Setsuko asks, why do fireflies have to die so soon? It's one of the most touching moments in the film. The fireflies, beautiful but fleeting, reflect not only the fragility of life and how it's like a vapor, but also the fleeting hope that siblings and kind of us as humans cling to. To echo Setsuko, we often question and ask people, why do bad things happen to good people? Or, if God exists, why is there so much suffering in the world? We ask the same questions. Why do the fireflies have to die so soon? Sin and brokenness have caused this world to spiral in chaos. People want power. People seek survival out of selfish means. And because of that, the world isn't how it should be. I'll tell you guys a part of my own story is that when my father passed when I was 15, having a parent pass away at any age, you are finding your way and you're growing into an adulthood. For a kid, it's unfortunate and hard because it's the time that you need two parents. So when he died, I was left questioning God. Why did you have to take him so early? Something I still ask now. And it would suck if God was just like, it is what it is. This is life. But God doesn't leave us there. He actually cares a lot. In the Gospel of John, there's a story of Lazarus dying, and everyone is upset and they're devastated that this has happened. But they believe that if Jesus was with them, it wouldn't have happened. So Jesus goes to them. And in verse 35 in this chapter of John, it says that Jesus wept. Now, this is significant because Jesus got in the flesh, perfect, did everything right, did not sin, cried. He experienced sadness and comforted Mary and Martha and those around them because he cares. He cares about what sin and death has done to this world. But the crazy thing is, Jesus didn't just weep. He did something about it. He raised Lazarus from the dead, letting them and us know that death will be reversed, that death won't have the final say, that suffering itself will end one day. Even more so, Jesus points to this in his life, death, and resurrection when taking on our sin and shame and guilt so that everyone that believes in him and trusts in him will have a relationship with God and eternal life. Him rising from the dead has been a declared reversal that this suffering and brokenness and evilness and war that's happening right now will not continue, but will one day this world itself will be made new with peace and hope and joy. We can hope in this because this hope isn't fleeting. It isn't extinguished by war, death, or suffering, or family. Revelation 21:4 tells us he will wipe away every tear from their eye. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. For the Christian, this is the hope that sustains us, even in the darkest of times. I think Grave of the Fireflies leaves us with a heavy heart, and it punctures us a little bit. But it's also a reflection. It's a reminder that life is fragile, that the depth of human pain and this world is broken, but there's a beauty in sacrificial love. And I think as a Christian, this is highlighted even more in the story, in the gospel story of Jesus. And the great thing about the story of Jesus is that the story does not end in despair. If this movie struck a chord with you, I encourage you to consider what it might mean to place your hope in Jesus during a time of suffering when everything feels like it's falling down. You may be upset today about a bunch of different things. You may be upset about the reality of election. You may be upset about what's going on overseas, what's going on in your own home. What might it look like for you to place your faith in Jesus? What might it look like for you to trust Jesus with your hope and pain and brokenness and give it to him? And the great thing about it is that the great thing about Jesus, about God who came down to be in relationship with us, is that he offers a relationship with us. He offers to speak into our pain and step into our lives purely by grace. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the film. If you watched it, did it make you cry? Did it make you sad? Did it make you angry? Let me know how the film impacted you, and I will catch you in the next video.